Okay. Did you see Adam's thing?
All right.
Doesn't matter. I interpreted those questions.
Let us go ahead and begin.
Okay. I'm sorry.
It'll truly be okay. It's no biggie. You did good, and it'll be all right. All right. So, transmission of the Bible text. You've got your 3 on the column. You've got your 4-speed. You've got your 5-speed where you have to pull it in for reverse. You've got your little red button on the truck that you click up for the 10-speed. And that pretty much covers the transmissions.
Automatic.
Yeah, okay. So,
automatic now.
Here's the thing. Transmission is a big part of this discussion on how we got the Bible. You know, the Bible itself gives us a promise in 1 Peter 1, 23, 24. 24 maybe, quoting from Isaiah. All flesh is grass, and the glory of the flesh is like the flower of the grass. The grass withers, and the flower fades, but the word of the Lord will abide forever. So God's word says that God's word will never not be here. It will always be here. But how can we show that to a skeptical world and to people who want to know scientifically? How can you be sure what was written way back 3,000 some odd years ago? So let's say Moses wrote in 1400 BC, and now it's 2017. Well, that's between 34 and 3,500 years ago. How in the world could we possibly show that what was written that long ago has been faithfully copied and recopied and transmitted down and unto the present? Not only that, but I've got my New International Version, and I got my Reina Valera version. I got my Old American Standard Version. How do I know if any of these in their translated form is giving me a good representation of what was there? So anyway, people want to know. By the way, I need to put my content up here, I guess. People want to know if what we have today is really conveying the original message of the text or not. And that's a good question. So, when we think about those people that wrote the Bible, what happened to the originals? The originals are called the autographs. Autograph means the actual piece of papyrus or parchment that Moses actually wrote the laws of God on. What happened to that? Well, we don't know. We don't have any of them. So we don't have any of the autographs of the apostles or the prophets. Here's somebody's mama's old King James Bible, you know. It's got all these notes in it and everything, and we've all got special Bibles from our families like this. How do we know that Mama's old King James Bible in any way represents what was written a long time ago? How were these ancient documents copied and recopied? I mean, was it done professionally? Was it willy-nilly? Who did it? How did they do it? Were there any check and balance systems for accuracy? What was the deal with all that? all of the copies of the Bible up until 1450 were written by hand. They were, see that the Latin, Hebrew, the Latin, Spanish, Portuguese word mano, hands. Manuscripts, handwritten. So when we talk about manuscripts, we're talking about copies of the Bible written by hand, like they're doing right there. See, the one that they're copying from up there is called an exemplar. It's spelled E-X-E-M-P-L-A-R, exemplar. That's the good copy that they've got up there, see? And then they're making a new manuscript copy by hand, looking up there and then copying down just what's written. So most of, well, not most, all of the copies of the Bible before 1450 are manuscript copies, handwritten. And how can we know with any certainty, scientifically, that the present copies are accurate? Now, you've all, played the game Gossip.
Yes.
Somebody whispers something into somebody's ear, and then they turn and whisper it into somebody else's ear, and it goes all the way across the room, and then you ask the last person, well, what did they say? And usually it's messed up by the time it gets to the last person, because they didn't accurately hear all the way through. Somebody made a mistake, and then somebody else made a mistake, etc. So we're not talking about computers reading other computers. We're talking about human beings making copies and sometimes making errors in their copies. So how do we know that we can present an accurate text? See, that's a very good question. And when you get right down to it, what actual evidence supports the text? Like when we look at our Hebrew Bible, what actual textual manuscript evidence supports the text in that Hebrew Bible? When we look at our Greek New Testament, what actual manuscript evidence from what centuries, from what geographical locations, what actually supports the text of the New Testament? So we get a couple of hints from the Bible itself about this process. In Deuteronomy 31, which was where one of your important passages was from, we have this passage. Brother Jeremiah, read it for me, please, sir.
So Moses wrote this law and gave it to the priests, the sons of Levi, who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and to all the elders of Israel. Then Moses commanded them, saying, at the end of every 7 years, at the time of the year of the remission of debts, at the Feast of Booths, when all Israel comes to appear before the Lord your God, at the place which he will choose, you shall read this law in front of all Israel in their hearing. Assemble the people, the men and the women and the children, and the alien who is in your town, so they may hear and learn and fear the Lord your God, and be careful to observe all the words of this law.
All right, so Moses gives the autograph to the priests. Excuse me. So the priests take the autograph, and we know that they used it to read and to teach from. And then every 7 years they read it to everybody. So sooner or later, that book is going to wear out. Now, this book is kind of sad. And it's not that old. It's not near as old as the Law of Moses would be after a few years. But it's busted. Like you can see that page right there. He's sad. He's busted. Okay? And that page there, he's pretty sad also. All right? So he's not that old. This one is not that bad. He's torn somewhat and everything, but he's not as old as the other one here. This is my newest Greek New Testament right here. And he's a tiny bit sad. And he's my newest one. See? You get the point. So Bibles wear out. So what's going to have to happen? Well, here's an example in Deuteronomy 17, verse 18. Says, "Now it shall come about when he, the king, sits on the throne of his kingdom, he shall write for himself a copy of this law on a scroll in the presence of the Levitical priests." So here's the priests, and they've got the original. Or if the original is too old, they've got a really good copy from the original. And the king is going to make a copy in the presence of the priest. Why? Because they're not going to let him have that original or that good copy. He's going to have to make a copy from that one. See? And he's going to do it there, and then it's going to be with him. And he's going to read it all the days of his life. Now, I'm thinking, okay, you got your King David, you know. King David liked to read the law. "Oh, how love I thy law. It is my meditation all the day." So if David's got a copy of the law, and if he's using that Torah scroll every day, and if he's reading that thing, making notes in it, reading it, studying it, if he reigned 40-something years, you reckon he might even need a new copy once or twice during that 40-something years? Yeah, probably so. So you can see that the very use of the law by the people necessitates the making of copies of the law. All physical things wear out. Joshua 8 says, "Joshua wrote on the stones a copy of the law of Moses." I'd like to know how he did that. Who he used to do that. I'd like to see that in stone with all these Hebrew characters cut in that stone, how he did that. But I don't know how he did it. But I know that he made a copy. And that shows that...
Right, man?
Do what?
It would have been huge, though, right?
It would have been massive, yes. And how they did it, I don't know. Now, it could be that it just means that he copied the Ten Commandments, but it says he wrote the law, and it says he read all the words of the law. And in fact, I think if you read that passage, if I'm not remembering wrong, it says including the blessing and the curse. So if you read all the words of the law, including the blessing and the curse, you read all the way through the end of Deuteronomy, because the blessings and the curses are in Deuteronomy 28. So there was not a word of all that Moses had commanded which Joshua did not read before the assembly of Israel. So a few years after the death of Moses, the law of God was being read. It was being copied. So there were obviously copies being made. 2 Kings 23:2. You know, this is where Josiah found the old book of the law that was neglected in the temple. Now, I would imagine that copy in the temple, which was from the copies that the priests had made over the years, was a pretty good copy. But he found it, and he read it, and it caused a great reformation in the time of Josiah. Nehemiah. This is after the Babylonian captivity. So did they preserve some copies from the copy in the temple and then copy those and then bring that back? And Ezra the priest is reading from what came out of the temple or copies of what came out of the temple, because this is 70 years after the beginning of the captivity. So you have to assume that copies were being made all along in this history. We're talking starting out at 1400 BC, and now we're down to like 465 BC in the time of Ezra. So we're 1,000 years. You think there were several copies made in 1,000 years? I'm thinking so, yes. But God still says in 1 Peter 1:24 and 25 that the word of the Lord abides forever. And I believe God has kept that promise. But the purpose of this section of this class is to show you exactly how God has kept that promise and how we can really know that we have an accurate Bible. So we have to go back and study some things. All right, the Bible is written in 3 basic languages. Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. That's Hebrew. But if you compare the Hebrew, just look at the letters and compare it to the Aramaic in the middle, it looks the same because it's made from the same letters. The same letters are used to write Hebrew as are used to write Aramaic. It's sort of like English and Spanish are made out of the same letters, A's and B's and C's and D's and E's. And Aramaic and Hebrew are made out of Aleph, Beths, Gimels, Daleths, and Heths, and Teths, and Yods, and Vavs, and all those kinds of things. So, Yeshavi, Yehudi, Banim, V'mitzlachin. And the elders of the Jews builded and prospered. That's from Ezra, chapter 6, verse 14. There are sections in both Daniel and Ezra that are written in Aramaic because it has to do with the Babylonians who were speaking Aramaic during the period of Babylonian captivity. There's a word or two in Genesis, a phrase or two in Genesis of Aramaic, because Laban was speaking Aramaic and Jacob was speaking Hebrew. Laban and Jacob made this covenant, and they piled up a pile of rocks as a witness. And Laban said, I'm going to call that Yagar Saha Detha. And Jacob says, I'm going to call it Gilead. But both of them called it a heap of witness, but it was in 2 different languages there, see? And then you've got Hutosgar Egapesin Hotheos Hokasmos, for God so loved the world. And that is Greek, of the Greek New Testament. So most of the Bible is written in Hebrew and Greek. Little bits of the Old Testament in Daniel and Ezra are written in Aramaic. Sometimes there'll be a letter from the king of Persia or something, and it's written in Aramaic in the book of Ezra. But most of the Bible is written in Hebrew and Greek. Now, everybody stop and focus on this part. If we can, we're going to have to tell that Denny, he's too loud in there. Denny, you're too loud, Denny. All right.
Turn it up, Danny.
Yeah, come on, Denny. All right, so anyway, a version everybody listen. Everybody listen. The word version, 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 means a translation. So a version is a translation from the original language into another language. So it's called the King James Version because it's a translation out of the Hebrew and Greek to a different language, English. So it's a version. This is the Reina Valera version because it's a translation from the Hebrew and Greek to the Spanish language. Now, the reason I'm telling you that, it is not correct to speak of the Hebrew version of the Old Testament. That is incorrect because the Hebrew is not a version. It is the original language. And it is not correct to speak of the Greek version of the New Testament because Greek is the original language. It's not a version. Version means translation. Are you with me on that, Brother Adam?
Yes, sir.
You didn't say that very convincingly.
Yes, sir. I got it.
All right. So, is this the Greek version of the New Testament?
No.
No.
No, it's the original language of the New Testament. But it's the New International Version because it's a translation from the Greek into English. All right. As we were saying, all copies of the Bible up until 1450 were manuscript, meaning hand-copied, hand-written. Manos, everybody, mano. Mano a mano, hand to hand. Hand, manuscript, handwritten. The earliest writing anywhere in the world that we know anything about is on clay tablets. It's a series of these little indentions in different ways into clay tablets, and it's called cuneiform script. Cuneiform. That's cuneiform script. That's taking a little chisel type thing and making little dashes and lines in clay tablets. Cuneiform. And there are a number of different archaeological finds from like 1900 BC before then that are in cuneiform script, like these. The Mari tablets, the Nuzi tablets, I think the Hammurabi stela, some of those things, cuneiform.
Back in 1800s BC?
Yes. But most of the Old Testament documents, were written on parchment scrolls. Now, parchment means animal skins. We've got 3 baby deer that play out in my backyard or right behind the fence. And their mother comes with them sometimes. But if their mother wasn't looking, and if it was way back in the times of the Bible, they'd kill those little deer because they would kill them, but they'd really try to kill the mother, and they'd pull the little baby deer out of the mother's belly, and they would take those unborn baby deer or just born baby deer or baby goat or baby lamb, and they would skin them and scrape the fine hair off of those newborn or unborn goat, sheep, deer, whatever. And they would stretch the skin of the little animals and dry it after scraping it. And it would make a really thin really fine material that you could write stuff on. They would scrape it with pumice and they would put chalk on it, and then they would have a writing material. And if you look toward the right side of that scroll up there, can you see where one piece of parchment is sewed together with another piece of parchment so they can keep rolling it? You see that? Yep. So they would take one skin and they would sew it to another skin and they would roll it up to make a scroll. See, that's how a biblion or a scroll was made. This is a Hebrew scroll written on parchment. This is like what Jesus would have been handed in the synagogue at Nazareth. Another type of writing material that was more common in New Testament manuscripts was papyrus, spelled P-A-P-Y-R-U-S, P-A-P-Y-R-U-S, papyrus. Papyrus is a big plant that grows in the marshes by the River Nile and other rivers over there. And you take the plant and you cut it in strips, cut open the stalks, and inside there's this pith, P-I-T-H, that you can peel out of there in strips, and you can lay them lengthwise, and you can lay some others horizontally across there on a flat surface like this person is doing. And then you press down on top of it with a heavy stone or something like that, and it mashes all that stuff together, and you let it dry. And then you have a very fine writing material. The Egyptians loved it. They loved to write on papyrus. And some of our very oldest New Testament manuscripts are written on papyrus. And if they are written on papyrus, they will be designated by a little p with a number superscript, like P52, P46, meaning papyrus 52, papyrus 46, whatever. So this is papyrus. You see the plants on one side. And one way you can always tell if you're looking at a papyrus manuscript is you see the lengthwise and horizontal fibers in it. You can see that as you look at it physically. If you hold it up to the light, you can see that. Parchment doesn't have that. Parchment is just skin. The word for parchment, write this down, parchment in the original language of Greek, membrana, M-E-M-B-R-A-N-A, membrana. What word do we get from that?
Membrane.
Membrane, which means skin. See, that's skin. So membrana, that's parchment. And papyrus is a word which in the original language is the same as grass. It's like the word for grass. The oldest fragment of the New Testament that we possess is the John Rylands papyrus, designated papyrus number 52. You can see the fibers of the papyrus running up and down there. This is just the front and back side, which is called the recto and verso side of John 18. It's a little part of John 18 that's written on this papyrus. And this piece of papyrus dates from about 100 A.D. So if scholars are right about this, John wasn't dead yet when this manuscript was copied. John was still alive. Now, let me see if mine has this here. Yeah. Excuse me. In the front of your Greek New Testament, I'm going to switch cameras here. In the front of your Greek New Testament, you have kind of a key to looking at the footnotes under the Greek New Testament, but it lists the papyrus, the papyri that we have, and it says P1, papyrus number 1. And the E stands for Gospels, like E is Gospels. So this is a papyrus manuscript of the Gospels. It's in a library in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and it dates from the 3rd century A.D. That would be the 200s A.D. This is a very old manuscript of the Gospels. Then you've got papyrus number 2, which also contains the Gospels. It is located in Florence, Italy, in a library in Italy. And this one is from the 6th century. So you have these various manuscripts cataloged there, and you have the key to what they contain. Like, say you've got papyrus number 71. It's a gospel papyrus from the Oxyrhynchus papyri. Dates from the 4th century. This is a 3rd century one. These two are from about the year 200. See, we have them listed there in the front. Okay. Papyrus means they're written on that plant material that they got out of the marshes. Parchment means they skinned those baby deer or baby goats, and they made them writing material out of baby goat skins. This one is a really up-close, good picture of a parchment or skin. You see the graininess of the leather there, the skin? Can you see the grain on it?
Yeah.
See, it looks very different than papyrus. This is parchment. This is Paleo-Hebrew script. There's different script that matches different periods of time. This one is very old, like back in the time of Jesus or earlier. Like the Dead Sea Scrolls would be a lot like this. So, difference between parchment and papyrus. All right. What time is it?
9:35.
9 what?
35.
All right. My watch died here, so.
Mickey's dead?
I'll put him on the charger and he'll come back. He'll go, where did I go? Okay, anyway.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
So, ancient scrolls, like the one you see in the picture here, like what was found in the Dead Sea cave, they're very fragile and they're very difficult to preserve. They're dried out after years and years and years. They have to be humidified and then carefully opened, pressed, so they're not crumbled up and destroyed as they're opened. This dude right here is an Egyptian scribe. And he's got a scroll, a parchment roll or a papyrus roll in his hand there. And he's copying. He's got a leather apron on. And they would sit cross-legged with a leather apron, and they'd put their paper on their leather apron stretched tight. And they would write on that scroll from dictation. Somebody would dictate, and they would take dictation down there. I can tell he's an Egyptian by the way he looks. You can tell other people how they look from different nationalities if you study the archaeology back at that time. This is another Egyptian scribe, same kind of setup. He's got his headdress on, and this other guy didn't have his headdress on. But he's got a manuscript of hieroglyphs in his lap, and it's already written. And he may be the one doing the dictating. I don't know, but it's another Egyptian scribe. Here's a similar guy, same type of scribe, ancient archaeological cut. He's got his scroll. One of them must have been right-handed, and the other one left-handed. And you see that he's got something stuck in his belt up there. That is his little, there's a little kit that they kept. And that kit had a reed pen or two in it that he made, and maybe a little water jar for mixing ink and some other things. And he has that little kit stuck in there, ready to do his writing with. Here's another one of their cousins. This is their third cousin on their mother's side. He's also an Egyptian scribe. And it was pretty straightforward the way you see them. Now these scribes right here, you see the little kit that's unfolded up there at the top, their little thing that the other guy had stuck in his belt. And you can see the little palette that was inside the kit up there that they mix their ink in and they dip their pen in and everything. And you can see their little reed pens that these people have. These are Syrian scribes, I would say, by looking at them, not Egyptian scribes. They're of a different nationality. But you can tell by their dress and by their hair and by other things the different nationalities that they have. But it was basically same deal. No matter which nationality you were, about copying manuscripts back in that time. Some more Syrian scribes, some men that were Syrians. And the Israelites were more akin to the Syrians than the Egyptians. See, Laban was a Syrian, and Nahor and those people that were related to Abraham were Syrians. And Palestine was often considered the territory of Syria, at least part of it. Now these Egyptian scribes here are copying dictation, and they're doing it like this is actually a IBM copier back in that time. That's what it is. So instead of having a machine, if you wanted 4 copies, you had to have 4 guys. And somebody would be sitting up there, and they would say, all right, we need 4 copies. Here's what we need. And he'd start reading, and they would start writing what he read. When you have multiple people copying, that's called a scriptorium. A group of scribes in a room that's making copies. That's a scriptorium. And certainly Paul, used an amanuensis from time to time, didn't he? Like writing the book of Romans. And then he would say, Tertius, give me that pen for a minute. I'm going to authenticate this. And he would write a great, big, ugly Paulos. And then he would write, see with what large letters I am writing to you with my own hand. And then he'd say, okay, that's enough. They know it's from me. And he'd give the pen back to Tertius. And he'd finish copying what Paul was saying. This is a reed pen and a water jar and a little palette for mixing the ink. They would take a cane reed and they would shave it off at an angle like a hypodermic needle, like the end of a hypodermic needle is at an angle real sharp. They would shave that thing off and whittle it down so that when they dipped it in the ink, the hollow part of it would soak up some of the water and the ink, and it would last for a little bit. So it's sort of like the old fountain pen, you know, with that kind of a concept, except a little bit older. So they used reed pens like this, pretty much. And they would take some soot off of a lamp and grind some nut gall with the soot off of a lamp, and they'd put a little water in it, and they'd mix it up in that little pallet right there till it was just right, the right thickness, and then they'd stick that reed pen in there, and they would make their copies there, see? All right. So, who wants to ask a question right now about any of this so far? Yes, no. Not yet. Okay. So, what does version mean? Adam Warrens?
It's a translation, so it's
That's
from a
it.
different. Yeah.
That is a translation. So what about speaking about the Greek version of the Old Testament? Is that correct or not correct?
No.
That's correct.
That's correct.
That's correct.
It is correct because the Old Testament was originally written in Hebrew. So the Greek version, the Septuagint, is a translation. So it's a version. Very good. What does manuscript mean, Brother Carl?
Manuscript means handwritten.
Yes, it does. It means handwritten. All right. Very good. Now,
Extra
look,
4 points.
look at Ezekiel. Ezekiel chapter 9. And look at verse 2, about midway down in the verse, in verse 2. It says, "With them was a man clothed in linen who had a writing kit at his side." Some of the old versions will say a writer's inkhorn. Some of them will say scribal kit. What does yours say?
Writing case.
New King
A
James
right-
has the inkhorn.
All right, writing case. What it's talking about is that stuff right there that those people have. See, they've got the little case up there, and it includes all that stuff that they're using. And they would, when they were done with it, they'd put it all in that little case and wrap it up. So the writing kit or the writing case is all that scribal stuff. Reed pen, palette for mixing ink, water jar, powder of nut gall and lamp black to use, whatever. It's all in there, see? So if we get ready to copy, we just fold that thing out and get our stuff and get it all mixed up and get ready and say, okay, I'm ready to go whenever you are. And it was good if you had a fro. It was good if you stuck a couple of extras in your hair. See, and if you busted the end of a pin, you could just reach up in here and grab another one and start writing. Brother Jeremiah.
Yeah, I was curious about the ink and how well it holds up. I mean, obviously, the ink they use is still legible today. Today
Right.
we have all these crazy inks, like scribal quality but I mean, they had something pretty good. They had to, and it
Yep.
was simple like that. I mean,
It was very simple. Yep, and it was good, and just experience taught them how to make it good. The the word for ink is M-E-L-A-N. M-E-L-A-N. What word do we get from that today? Melanoma, melanin, yes. And it literally means black. So it was dark, black looking stuff that dried usually to a brownish black. Depending on the mixture, it would dry more brown than black, dark brown. But that's what it was called. Now, so today, we've got us, like I showed you here, we've got our printed Hebrew Bible right here. And this is a critical Hebrew Bible, meaning it is based on all of the known manuscripts that we have, reconstructing the text as accurately as possible. And this chart here represents what exactly this printed Hebrew Bible is based on. It might be worth, this one and another one like it might be worth a picture. The printed Hebrew Bible is based on the great Masoretic manuscripts. We're going to talk about what those are, including the 24,000 or so Cairo-Geniza fragments, and then the Dead Sea Scrolls, which are the oldest Hebrew manuscripts that we have, along with a bunch of ancient versions, meaning what, Brother Aaron?
Ancient translations.
That's correct. Like the Syriac version of the Old Testament, the Latin versions of the Old Testament, the Greek versions of the Old Testament, the Coptic versions of the Old Testament, the Gothic versions of the Old Testament, etc. So there are a lot of manuscripts out there that form the basis of a printed Hebrew Bible. Printed meaning printed on a printing press. So see, when it came to setting type and printing something that would be reproduced the same way over and over again, that was impossible until the invention of the printing press. Okay, let's have a good chapel, and then we'll see about talking some more about wah, wah, wah. Yeah.
Went from abs to that like self-propelling.
Treadmill. You know the one that you all on it. It's like curved like a banana.
Yeah, I probably won't do anything else today. But I'm gonna go do the
I just figure out how I'm
thing.
getting home. I just realized if you take it to
Aren't we?
Red Rocks.
Well, I thought the plan was we're gonna go back. I'll pick up the VW. You keep your parents' car. We'll drive separately.
oh, I gotta go back with you at lunch.
Yeah.
Okay.
That. Oh, yeah. True. Because I wouldn't want to take you from lunch.
It's all good. I don't mind.
See, I feel bad. We just got off like 35 minutes later than we planned last time. It's too dark to do. So maybe to leave early, just otherwise I would take you back. Come back here.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
That's fine.
Perfect.
Yeah, I thought that was the original plan.
Yeah. 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 Well, yeah. Yeah. Let's talk more about that. I actually have to go preach and I have less than 5 minutes. No, you're good. Do do do.